you want a little wisdom, listen to Rabbi Brian. Rabbi Brian.
So can we all do that? Just take a breath of air. Because I don't know if you've noticed, but this is a fucking crazy time. Hey, this is Rabbi Brian in post-production. I'm really glad you're watching. I curse. Because I don't know if you've noticed, but this is a fucking... And there's a lot of stress going on right now. And a lot of it, I don't know if you've noticed, we don't have control over. And all we really have control over is like here. And it would really behoove us to take some of that control that we have and take a breath. This is a rough time. We were sitting upstairs talking to the kids at dinner time, and we said, look, it's going to be like this until November 6th, and we don't know which way it's going to go. But Mom and Dad are going to be stressed out, and we try to assure our 11-year-old and our 9-year-old as much as we can that it's nothing that they're doing that's stressing us out. But of course, they're 9 and 11, so you know they think this is all about them. And Annie she was weeping the other day because Jane was in a really bad mood, and Annie went after Jane, and Jane, backed some, and Annie, it made Annie feel better to have that connection, but then after the apologies and Jane wasn't feeling better, Annie couldn't understand why Mom was still tense. So, guys, folks, you're watching this, you're alive, you're a sentient being. This is a really horrible, stressful time. So welcome to Rabbi Brian's Garden, where you have 27 minutes of, well, we have 27 minutes to just be. Hey, post-production Rabbi Brian again. I don't really know what's going on with the little staccato that you can hear in the audio. Make a donation so I can hire a sound engineer. Thank you. I'm working on it. I didn't mean to put that on you. Now, I want to do just a quick check-in, and this is something I always did in my classrooms, and I think of this web room somewhat that way. And I'm going to encourage people who are not on Zoom to join us on Zoom, and I'm going to ask Tony Ann, who is on the Zoom room, would you moderate the chats there for me? Could you do that? I'm getting a thumbs up. And if people who are on the chat have a question or something that they need me to see, could you please throw it through Tony Ann, who will let me know, because it's easier than me having to keep track of everybody at once. So thank you for that. So let me do a quick check-in. Just by a show of hands, if your hands are at the bottom of the screen, that's I'm doing okay. Your hands are below the screen, that means I'm underwater. And your hands are up means, woohoo, life is great. Just where are you? Put your hands up. Where are your hands at? Because mine, I think I have them like here. Like I got one underwater and one above water. Yeah, it looks like, hey, we're all having the same experience of reality. It's a really rough time in our village right now. It's really hard. I gave some homework, and I want to talk about that. I gave some homework, and the homework was from last week to see if you could incorporate the idea of spaciousness into your world, right? So if you have only 5 minutes to do something, there are two ways of looking at a 5-minute time limit. You can go, oh my God, we got 5 minutes, I got to get all this done. Or you can say, we have a spacious 5 minutes. And I remember saying clearly last week that the first time I heard somebody refer to a 5-minute period of time as spacious, I wanted to punch her in the throat. Because it was like, that's... So just type in or give me some visual cue did anyone try the homework of trying to have a little more spaciousness in their lives? And I got a few people who are non-visual, so I can't see them. But did you try to be... you know what I'm feeling right now, folks? I'm feeling exactly like Mr. Rogers must have felt, which is you're talking to people as though they can see you, but they can't. And I'm going to show the people who are on screen if there's me, a picture of me featured as Mr. Rogers, because I'm working on a meditation book, and the illustrator made it into me as Mr. Rogers. But I guess this is what Fred Rogers kind of did, was like... And I see that. Thank you, Alex. Alex is holding up a little sign about spaciousness. I'm assuming that was about spaciousness, and her sign had kind of the munch face like this and said, impossible. Like, I cannot find spaciousness. That's amazing, right? We can't find spaciousness. So you know what that means if you didn't get the homework assignment done last week, Alex. And Alex, I think you've met my family, and I don't know if you know we have a rule in my house that if you roll your eyes, you have to sing a Whitney Houston ballad. Because we didn't know how to punish the kids for rolling their eyes. So, hey, Scott. I see Scott there. Hey. So you don't actually have to sing, Scott, a Whitney Houston ballad. But, yeah, spaciousness. It's really hard to do, and yet it's something... ostensibly that's within all of our control at all times, and good luck to all of us. Other question that was from last week, it was in the newsletter yesterday, was about crossing the line, about going over the line of giving ourselves permission to do something, that we usually, we try to stay safe, we try to stay safe, and so we don't cross that line. And what we wind up doing is we make the line over here now. And then we don't cross that line. And then we make the line over here. And we just stay safer and safer. And I'm afraid we also stay less, the safer we are, the less authentic we are. Right? Because it's only when you're really real, which is where that line is. And that's what I want to encourage us this week, is to cross the line. And I have a buddy who sent me an email yesterday, and I'm really sorry that he can't be here on the video right now, but I'm going to tell a story. He told me he was with a mutual friend of ours, and they were cleaning out a big plastic bin of pool toys, and out of the bin there were these two rubber balls that were pool floats, and he says to the buddy, hey, you want to hold my balls? And the friend takes them and kind of laughs. And unbeknownst to the two of them, there's someone overhearing who clears their throat really loud, really disapprovingly, because that joke was way over the line for that person. And then it left the two of them feeling like sophomoric boys, like, ooh. But they felt, and he said to me, my friend, he said, I went over the line. And I didn't know that it was going to be over the line, and I felt bad about it. And my point was that unless you go over the line, you can then say to the person, hey, do I owe you? Because he didn't know if he should ask for, if he should apologize. He said, Rabbi, I don't know if I should apologize. And I said, well, why don't you do this? Why don't you say to that person, hey, do I need to apologize? And you can check it out. So what I'm trying to say is, feel free to cross the line some. I did it last night at a meeting. I said it was a equity meeting, and I said some stuff that was near racist, stereotyping, and I apologized after I said it. I said, wow, I think I went over the line there. And people said, yeah, I think you did. But it was a safe space, and we're able to process. And we got more clarity because I helped us as a group figure out where the line is. And I'm going to put this out for everyone who's listening, who's watching. Can you forgive yourself when you go over the line? Can you allow yourself to make mistakes? The example in the newsletter that a lot of people responded to was that Annie went over the line in blaming me for not knowing where her Lammy doll, her sleepy, lovey Lammy was. She blamed me for that, and I told her that was inappropriate. But how would she know unless she went over the line and unless I explained it to her? Apparently, also, I went over the line in my newsletter because my opening word was fuck. And I did that intentionally to cross the line, and I lost a lot of subscribers yesterday because I went over the line. Now, I don't think I'm going to email them to apologize because I think they left on their own accord. They know why they left. I thought of another reason they might have unsubscribed was I pushed a liberal agenda, I guess. In the newsletter, I talk about the Resistance Bible Study podcast and my interviews with people trying to take religion in the Bible and re-spin it for what it originally was, which is a book about liberation from tyranny and a book about love. And I think some people might not have liked that, and that might be why they unsubscribed. Might not have been the cursing, although I think there might be some overlap. Okay, that's all that. I'm going to take a breath of air. I've been doing a lot of talking. I want to see what's going on in the chat room on Facebook. Oh, hey, Jay Bush. Nice to see that you're there, if you're still there. And anyone on Facebook, and I see there's some questions in there. Anyone on the chat room in Zoom, if you have any questions, to please type them in there as well. Anything that I've hit on. And I do want to talk about one other thing related to this. Of let's say you cross the line. Let's say you cross a line. And then there's atonement that has to be done. There's some kind of forgiveness process that has to happen once you cross a line. And I want to talk about that, and I want to first tell you a beautiful story. So, is everyone comfy? Everyone ready? Rabbi Brian's going to tell you a beautiful story. And this is a story that's told by the people who live in the northern hills of Thailand. And I heard this story when I was there. And this story that's told in the northern hills of Thailand were that the gods were all gathered together. And they saw all of humanity. And they saw humanity had this flaw they didn't foresee. And that humanity every so often would do something that was, for lack of a better word, wrong. And humanity would try as best as humans could in their limited beings. Humanity would try to make amends, would try to make reparation, would try to make up for that fault. But what the gods saw was that as time passed, the number of errors grew and grew and grew because the output of forgiveness couldn't happen as quickly as the input of sin or wrong or whatever word you want to use for that. And so the gods consorted together and said, how can we help humanity who have this now infinite amount of error in their life? How can we fix that? And one of the gods had this brilliant idea. And this god said, I have a brilliant idea. And the idea is, I will take my infiniteness and contract myself. There's a word in Hebrew, tzimtzum, which translates to this idea that this God will contract that God's self into a finite capsule so that the infinite becomes finite. And that God then, in the finitude of itself, would kill itself as a way to make up for all of the error that had accumulated in humankind, and thereby free humanity from all of this error. And of course, the God being a God came back to being infinite and a God. And the idea of these people who live in the North Hills of Thailand is that that's how humanity is forever forgiven, is because the gods loved humanity so much. Now, some of you who are listening might have heard something a little interesting in this story. Now, yes, it is true, it is a story told in the northern hills of Thailand. But it is a story told by the Christians who live in the northern hills of Thailand. For the story I have just told you is the story of Jesus. That God so loved humanity that God sent God's self as a sacrifice. The reason I tell it as a story of the northern hills of Thailand is because I find that we all have a lot of baggage. We have a lot of baggage when it comes to the Jesus story. And I love, it's a beautiful story of forgiveness. And the idea that we are all forgiven. And take the baggage out of it. There's this quote, and I shared this with my friend who give me 1 second, Susan. Is that you, Susan?
Yes?
Did you have a question, my friend?
No?
Oh, I apologize. I thought somebody had a question a moment ago. And I apologize if there's a... Oh, I think there's an echo happening. Susan, I'm going to mute you for right now because there was an echo going through your phone. Let me go back to this idea that I said these words to my friend who was cleaning out the pool toys. And I said this, is that it is often easier for us to feel guilty than it is for us to feel forgiven. I want you to take that for a moment and think on that. That it is sometimes, often, I don't know which adverb works for you better, but it is sometimes easier to feel guilty than to feel forgiven. And I would like to offer the idea that you try on for a minute or two. What if you actually are forgiven? What if you are, for all of the wrongs you have done that you have tried to make up for, and for all of the things that you have done, what if you actually are forgiven? And if that doesn't work immediately for you, I'm working on this idea of selling shares of Absolution. Oh, I see Keith is on the line now. Hi, Keith. The idea of Absolution is that... Now, here's the thing, and this is something I came to actually talking with Keith. Keith and I had a conversation yesterday about this. And the question is, how can I ever sell anyone Absolution? And we had this really intellectual, fun discussion about how can I sell Absolution? And what could you sell? What could be the price? What am I going to buy? What are you going to give me that I can then give you Absolution? And in our discussion, Keith and I came to, the only thing I can take as currency to give you Absolution is guilt. If you are willing to give up your guilt, I can promise you that I can give you the Absolution. Now, I'm not saying that we should make this a public thing and that all people who have done all things that are wrong should be able to buy themselves Absolution because they no longer feel bad about what they did. And the news is filled these days with stories of people who have done wrong, and we know they have done wrong, who don't feel guilty, and I do not think should be absolved. I would like to see in the news people who come forward more, who say, I feel horribly guilty. I have changed my ways. I have not done that thing since. And I feel awful. And I'm sorry. And then I think we as a society could forgive them because they have come to atone. They've come to, there's a Hebrew word, tshuva. They've come to ask for, to be returned. Teshuva means to be returned into the group. Okay, that's going to sum that part. Any questions? Hi, Adri. I see Spanish teacher used to teach across the hall from me, but you have Adri as your name, but I used to call you by something slightly different than that. Anyway, hi, glad you're here.
You have 2 comments from Alex.
Okay. Can you tell me what I got, Tony?
The chat says I wasn't actually intending to roll my eyes. My expression was one of contrition and knowing that I have to try again at spaciousness.
Aha.
My excuse is that my job makes spaciousness very difficult. Then there's a quote.
Yeah. Okay, I got you. So we're back on the spaciousness thing. Spaciousness is really hard, but let me try to see if, and I don't know if this will work, if I can tie that together. I think guilty people are more smushed together, and there's an idea of spaciousness that we're more open, and we have this more lax feeling to ourselves. I'm going to take a moment and ask people who are watching to take a moment to see if there's a question that you want to type into the chat box. And here's a chance to, the rabbi is in, or ask the rabbi. I'm not sure what this section is called yet. I got about 5 minutes. And I see actually there's a question here on Facebook, and I'm going to try this. How to better let go and let God. Intellectually, I understand the concept. Emotionally, when it comes to loved ones, not so much. Do you have any magic exercises to practice? Well, Gina, thank you for that question. That's a fantastic question. The question is, do you have any pointers on how to better let go and let God? And she writes, intellectually, I understand the concept, but emotionally, not so much. So, first of all, hooray, Gina. That's fantastic, because that's how a lot of our learning is first we understand the idea, we know what we should do, and it takes us a while till we can bring it down here into our hearts where we can actually do it. I find that often with acceptance, right? We can accept something that has happened, and it takes us a while to go from accepting it, I get it, until we get to, I get it. And it's a subtle difference. So I hate to give this answer on how to do it. Is first, give yourself props for doing what you've done. That's fantastic. And two, practice. Just keep practicing it. As you find something that you know you should let go of, and just keep practicing letting go. And I would say, like with any other exercise, practice with easier things. Practice with there's not a parking spot at Trader Joe's. Like, you get there's not a parking spot at Trader Joe's, but see if you can work that one into a heartfelt acceptance. And to start with, Pema Chodron talks about this. She quotes one of her teachers. She says, start with the bourgeois problems. And if you start with the bourgeois problems, then you can get yourself to the harder to accept ones later. But don't try to start with the really hard ones. And I got another question that's just in from my friend Kim. Hi, Kim. It says, Tony, do you have a moment? Can you read that to me so I don't have to...
Is it normal that when a pain or wound is named and acknowledged, that it can finally start to heal, even quickly?
Oh, yeah. Is it normal that when a pain is named, it heals more quickly? And I would say absolutely, Kim. It's kind of the same as when you go to the doctor. I don't know if everyone has this experience, but I know I have. When I go to the doctor and I don't feel well, and I just don't feel well, and the doctor says, oh, you have a sinus infection? And then all of a sudden I feel like, oh, I have a sinus. I can deal with a sinus infection. I can do that because we've named it. We know what it is. There are 3 qualities. Let me see if I can get a piece of paper nearby. There are 3 qualities that this is going to seem a little bit like a tangent, but let me show you them. There are 3 qualities that make a nightmare a nightmare. 1, there is a lack of control. 2, you don't like it. Not pleasurable. And the 3rd, lack of control, not pleasurable, and there's a timelessness to it. It's never going to end. There's something about naming something that alleviates some of this. It's still not pleasurable, but I've named it, so now I kind of know what it is. Once you've named it, you got a little bit better chance of putting it in a box. Let me answer it a little bit this way, differently. The difference between fear and anxiety, maybe this would help too, is that fear is always with an of. Fear of snakes, fear of public speaking, fear of zombies, fear of absolution, whatever the fear is of. Anxiety, on the other hand, is without an object. It's just fear. And there's something about knowing what something is, naming it, which puts it in a box, which makes us a lot more comfortable. Okay. I thank you for those questions. I'm going to end the Ask the Rabbi section, and I'm going to give you your homework for next week. Actually, you have a week off next week because it's the last Tuesday of the month. So we'll be back on December 6th. And here's the assignment, folks. In the next 2 weeks, I want you to try this little game, little thought exercise. Instead of saying, I have to, oh, I have to undo the dishes. Instead of saying, I have to get to that email from that annoying person. I have to, whatever the have to is. Instead of have to, try saying, get to. I get to unload the dishwasher. I get to email that person back. It's a tiny little one-word change, but it really makes a big difference. And I look forward to seeing, to hearing how that goes. And this is, of course, not an assignment that you have to do. You get to do it. Any questions? We seem to be about 4 minutes early, but I'm good there. Where are we at, people? Oh, I have new comments on the Facebook. Hold on. Gina says hi. Hi, Eric. Hi, Ari. Hi, Elena. So I'm just saying little shout outs and hi to all the people who are on Zoom and hello to all the people listening to this in post-production because it makes its way as a podcast, and hello to all the people who are watching this as a video. Let me do a quick shout out for the Resistance Bible Study podcast. If you haven't already listened to it, please take a look. Go to resistancebiblestudy.com or ROTB/resist. It is a 12-episode podcast of me talking with friends of mine who know a lot about the Bible, because it seems a lot of people don't know a lot about the Bible and don't know that it's actually a handbook on liberation from oppression and a book about love. Because if you listen to the call of the Bible, it's about freeing ourselves from oppressors. That's really what the book's about. That's what my 12 guests are all trying to help everyone to see. Questions, comments? Oh, and I just see I just see a comment that people have downloaded the podcast and are enjoying it. All right, folks, let's end with a breath of air. Or if you can, if you want to. They're not required. Just the exhales. Exhales are required. You don't have to inhale ever. I'm joking. Very good. I'm going to play my theme song as an exit and have everybody wave and say goodbye. Where's my theme song?
If you want a little wisdom, listen to Rabbi Brian. Rabbi Brian.
The Resistance Bible Study.
The Resistance Bible Study podcast.
Join me. Engage. Resist.
No, I was just trying to figure out how to ask a question.
There you go. You're in. What is the question you have?
What do you recommend to do when the